What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. Today's episode, I got to talk with Minneapolis's Magick Flavor Station. Earlier this year, they released their debut full-length, Life is Moving Too Fast, and I'm Stuck in the Snow. We got to talk about the album's creation, their earlier work in the vaporwave community, where their music is headed, and a whole lot more. Without any further ado, here's my interview with Raymond of Magick Flavor Station on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How's it been going? I know we both just kind of woke up.
Yeah, no, I just woke up. It's also cloudy and kind of disgusting here, but I live kind of in the woods, so it looks kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool, a better vibe than Dinkytown. And
yeah, at least for cloudy weather, like
yeah,
I live really close to a trail. So sometimes when it gets like ugly weather, I just like walking around it, and it makes me feel like I'm in like a nature version of Silent Hill or whatever. I don't know if that sentence makes sense.
I feel you. Cool. Just before we get into any of the nitty gritty or anything, why don't you introduce yourself for listeners at home who might be new to your music, unfamiliar, just to give us like the basic kind of spiel about who you are and who. I mean, Magick Flavor Station is the primary project we're talking about today, and we'll get more into that, but you have several other names and projects you've been working on over the years.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Raymond. I've been making music since middle school. I used to like primarily focus on like making like vaporwave, like whether it was like, I kind of flip around genres a lot, but I used to make that shit under the name Uncle Squids, and I still do once in a while, but I haven't released anything for that project in a long time, even though I have a lot of stuff saved up. But that's a whole other conversation. But primarily, I kind of focus on like Magick Flavor Station right now, which is like my kind of vaporwave, but also kind of indie folk, also like kind of like whatever. I don't know how to describe it, especially the new album I've been working on. It's definitely gotten a lot more electronic, but it's very, but at the same time, it's also very like folk based. And
yeah,
yeah, I don't know if that's a good intro.
I think that sums it up. No, that was great. And more information will reveal itself as we actually talk about the different projects and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
I always like talking to musicians about kind of their first connections with music, because I find that anybody that writes, records, performs, especially music, and just has that be such an important part of their life, has had a really close relationship or connection with music, even just as a listener for a very long time. So I'm curious, what was your relationship with music when you were growing up and first kind of your eyes were first kind of opening to the world of music out there? And when was the first time you like, I guess, really felt like it was something that was yours versus just something that was like out in the world or like being shown to you? Like something that's like, oh no, this is something that I'm connecting with and that I'm kind of laying claim to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Let me think about that a little, because there's a lot of different, for me, it wasn't just one, like, this is what made me get into music. There was like a bunch of factors. My dad was really into music, and so like at a young age, he showed me all of that. He took me to a lot of my first concerts. Like my first concert was Paul McCartney at at fucking, what's the baseball stadium? The one that's out.
Oh, I only know Target and Excel. I'm sure I would
Target.
recognize. Is it Target? Okay.
I think. No, it wasn't.
Was it the Metrodome at the time?
It might have been.
Because the Metrodome was like the old baseball stadium before it collapsed.
I was like 12.
Okay,
so
it was probably the Metrodome then, if my poor local memory, history is serving me.
That sounds right to me, but definitely my dad was a big influence into like getting me into like older. I was primarily into like old boomer rock for a long time before I branched out, but yeah, my dad's iPod had like hella old like psych rock on it, and that's kind of what got me started. You know, like the Jimi Hendrix Experience, like later Beatles records, and even like Sid Barrett era Pink Floyd, which is what really like was one of the first things that like drove me into wanting to try to songwrite. But yeah, so definitely my dad was a big part, and also video games, which is gonna sound weird, but
I think that makes a lot of sense given what we're talking about. That's cool.
yeah, no, I when I was younger, before I got into music, I was into like old video games, and I used to always like go to garage sales and try to like get what I could get. I mean, obviously like old for me, like the best find I think I've ever found at a garage sale was for $8. I got one of those jungle green Nintendo 64s with a copy of Ocarina of Time.
$8. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
fucking
awesome.
yeah, I know, that's fucking insane. And like every year that goes by, that's more and more insane to me, because that shit is like worth like at least like $250 now.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually part of the reason I got into music is because video games are getting really expensive, and I was like, I need to do something that like I feel like I'm doing something, you know? So like music, it just like I can make a song and then that's a thing I can show people, where it's like if I play Ocarina of Time for like 12 hours, amazing video game, but like, you know,
yeah, like unless you're like doing like a let's play or something, there isn't as much to like show about it besides like telling people about it and like
there's a lot of angles you can take with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do remember though, that kind of reminds me one time when I was like, how old was I? I think I was 8. But I had Ocarina of Time 3D on my 3DS, and I was trying to show my great grandparents, and my mom pulled me over, and she didn't say this sentence obviously, but basically the vibe was like, they don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You need to like stop talking about video games.
That's so funny.
But yeah, that shit has definitely influenced the way like I make music and shit, especially with the vaporwave stuff. Like, I always try to make synths that sound like they were in like synth noises, or like I always try to find samples that just sound like they were in like a Sega video game from like the fucking 90s.
Yeah, that's cool. As you mentioned, kind of around the time you were in middle school, started actually really diving into making your own music. What was that kind of early process like? Was it kind of sticking with the electronic thing, leading you down the pathway to making your vaporwave projects, or was it a little bit more all over the place? Kind of what were some of your initial like songwriting attempts, and when you were first starting to try to produce beats or just your instrumentals to go along with your songs and everything?
In 6th grade, I got a bass guitar, and I started playing bass, and like I focused on that heavily. So I kind of started with that. Eventually, one day I just ran. I think it was like for my birthday. I you know those like Korg Volca Beats, like drum machines.
I think so. Yeah.
Where it's like this really shitty, like fucking, well, not shitty, but like
it's
really
pretty
weird.
cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a dinky like sounding. I got one of those for my birthday, and so I started trying to record music with Audacity. So I would like, I think I still have some of these saved if you want to listen to them, but like I would record the drum machine pattern into Audacity, and then I would record me like playing like a bass lick or whatever I made up, and it was really bad. But eventually, that's how I started, and then I would buy like more and more synths with like any money I'd get, and like it got way easier when I was in high school and I had a job. But yeah, I would just buy synths that I could record into Audacity. I still don't know how to use like a regular DAW. Eventually, I found like a cassette 4-track around, I think at the time I was like 14, 15. I found a cassette 4-track at like a music go round for like $15.
Not bad.
So I started recording on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just kind of just came from me dinking around with shit and trying to make stuff work, while also simultaneously not learning how to actually properly do it, which has kind of just been my MO. Just figure it out, but be too lazy to figure out how to do Ableton or some shit.
Yeah, just use what you got instead of taken like I don't know years it takes to really get proficient with
Yeah.
the expensive DAWs and the I don't want to say the real ones because that sounds like gatekeepy, but like stuff like Pro Tools and like Logic and stuff.
Theoretically, you shouldn't be recording music with Audacity.
True.
It's definitely not the software you want to use for it. That's just what I figured out how to record music on. But you definitely should not, especially like again, like I was connecting like synths and stuff to it, so it was like kind of fine, but like that was a weird janky software to start with.
It is a janky one.
I kind of like, I mostly just use tape equipment now, and like eventually I started buying other gear. Like whenever I make beats, I have, I wonder where I put it in my room. Oh wait, this is an audio podcast. That won't matter. But,
you're all good.
I have an MPC I bought from I did a vinyl release with that Desert Squid.
Oh, cool.
I think we were just talking about that before. I ended up getting like a pretty decent check from that. So I bought like one of those MPC things, and that's what I make beats on now. But
well, I guess sort of using Desert Squid as a segue, what really drew you into even just like the vaporwave like community, and especially what kind of got you into making that kind of music yourself beyond just like the basic like drum pad and bass riff kind of stuff you were doing when you were first starting out?
Well, let me think here. I think like even before I started recording shit, I remember I was in like 7th grade and I randomly found this like vaporwave documentary where it was like fucking, I forget what it was called, but like for a while it was like, if you looked up like vaporwave, this documentary by like, I think this dude named like Was-X would come up, and it was like, and I watched it and I was like, all this music, because like I was just, the only music I was familiar with at that point was like boomer rock and like all of that, like I was saying earlier. So like I remember they were just playing like these like video clips of like Windows 90 and like stereotypical like vaporwave shit while like Macintosh Plus played in the background. If you're like obviously like the more you get into music, the like less impressive that is, but like if you're 13 and you've never seen anything like that before outside of like, again, like maybe some like 80s Pink Floyd stuff your dad will show you, like that shit is like really crazy. And I think like vaporwave in general kind of was a great stepping stone for recording music, because theoretically all you have to do to make a vaporwave song is just take like an 80s sounding sample and slow it down and chop it up. And like you can do that on Audacity. So that was kind of like that whole like finding vaporwave at a young age is kind of like what was like my gateway drug into recording music, because eventually instead of like slowing down Dreamcast songs, I got synths and I tried to make Dreamcast sounding synths noises, you know? Like my first the Dreamcast matters to me a lot. Like the first project I did that I ever released publicly was this album called like Dreamcast, and then like a bunch of like, I forgot the actual title, but it was like Dreamcast and all the, you know, space between every letter, vaporwave kind of shit. But it was just literally I was just slowing down like Dreamcast songs, and that was it.
Apt title.
The cover was really cool though, because I just figured out how to chroma key. So I took like a bunch of like CRT pictures of like Dreamcast games running, and I layered them on top of each other. That was I did a cassette release for that, and that was like my first like album I ever put out. I think
was it the first thing on physical, I'm guessing?
Yeah, on physical.
Oh, that's cool.
I think no, I did one before that was like a shit post, but I don't really count that. But like, yeah, that was like my first like real album, and I released it on this label called Seaside Bliss that still is running. Shout out.
Yeah.
I think he still goes by Mr. Ocean, but shout out that dude.
Shout out that guy. Cool. Going from there, we don't have to get super into these, but once you started releasing stuff under the Uncle Squids moniker in kind of like 2019, going into 2020 with we'll use this as a segue into talking about Desert Squid, but kind of briefly talk about how those projects came about, and then with Desert Squid, just how did you get connected with them, with like the label and everything? How did that project come about? We talk a little bit about kind of the creative process for that, just because I mean that's, at least to me, and my coworker who I'm going to tell us about later, that's just like really cool. Just like anything with that is like, it's a cool release. I'm excited to spend more time with.
I mean, so that was a long time ago. That was we didn't even release it until like 2 or 3 years after we completely finished the album.
Oh, word.
But
okay.
I was in high school, and it was like 2017, 2018. So like Desert wasn't like, we were like at the same level, not at the same level, but basically I just randomly tweeted out, I was like, hey, does anyone want to make like some 2814 like type like ambient vaporwave shit, which is, I think that's around the wording I used, which is a little embarrassing to admit now because I've had Twitter beef with HKE, but that's a
lot of people have. We don't need to get into that.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. But I tweeted that out, and some guy added Will Desert and was just like, I've made an album with this guy, and he was pretty good. And then we just started talking on Discord, and it kind of just happened. The whole creative process for that album, which we are working on a second one right now.
Cool.
But that won't be ready for a while.
Yeah, no rush.
Yeah, for sure. But like we would just literally, I would just make like a loop with like my synths, and then I'd send it over to Will, and then Will would make some crazy fucking slush wave with it, and then like, you know, Will would send loops to me. And if you notice, like the first side of that album sounds like different from the second side. Mm-hmm. The first side was loops Will sent me that I slowed down, and then the second side was the other way around.
Oh, cool.
Well, I didn't just slow them down.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I chopped and remixed it, and then the second side was I sent Desert loops. I don't know if he likes being called Will or not in public interviews. I'll have to ask, but
yeah, definitely. If we need to
worst
cut anything
case, we'll
out,
just have to bleep it out.
Yeah.
I made that album, and then while we were making it, like Desert was really starting to pop off. Like I remember he sent me like the first like early like sample free albums he was working on.
Oh, yo.
And he was like, check this out. And I was like, I remember I told him he should just slip one of the sample free songs into a whole album of sample based stuff, and just like say, I told him he should do something like, hey, I forgot what the sample is. I'll pay $200 to anyone who can find it, and just like not then acknowledge that was actually. Oh, but instead,
that'd be a good prank.
Instead he ended up releasing a whole sample free album. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. And in general, like the sample free slush stuff that he does is really inspiring to me, because that shit, like, it's like when you do that with like the context of like vaporwave, where everything is supposed to be like sampled or sound like it's sampled, like it just opens up a lot of doors, because then you can basically manufacture whatever and then slow it down into the vaporwave. I don't know if those words made sense. I did just wake up, but
I think at least it made sense to me, but we're doing okay. Going from there, when you were working on your own Uncle Squid stuff, like, was that kind of a similar process of just like making loops, where like instead of sending something over to Desert and having it be slowed down there and like having him do that, or vice versa? Was it just like you were making your own loops and then slowing it down, or what was kind of the process on like a broad scale, kind of working on those earlier Uncle Squids, those early vapor projects, just that were, at least from what I can tell, just you?
Yeah. It was a different process every album. Because like I really, up until Magic Flavor Station, I didn't really know where I wanted to go with music, so I was just kind of making whatever. Like I did have these like 2 like ambient drum releases that got tape releases a long time ago, and you can still find them.
You'll have to
But
send those over my way. I heard the word drone and I got excited.
oh yeah, no, they were. I with those ones, I literally, they're not as cool as you would think. I literally just made like a 4-minute synth jam, and then I pause stretched it so it was 50 minutes instead. So it wasn't like, it wasn't anything that crazy.
That I'm here for it either way.
Yeah, I can send you some of that stuff when we're done. But no, that's how that started. But eventually, when I got that cassette 4-track, and you know, I had a couple synths laying around, I wanted to try to make beats and shit. So I would just start with a fucking like synth loop while I was messing with drums and stuff, my core vocal sample, and then I would just layer like other synth noises on it using the cassette 4-track. And that kind of, even though like I started not specifically doing lo-fi stuff, I kind of realized at a certain point, and this definitely affected how I do Magic Flavor Station too. I just kind of like realized that like a lot of artists at my level, no matter what you try, like your music is not going to be 100% perfect sounding, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're like 15, 16 and you only have like so much money for gear and stuff. So
yeah.
I decided after a certain point, I was going to go the opposite direction, just try to make it as lo-fi and fucking cassette fucked up sounding as possible. And yeah, it just shifted around a lot basically. And I don't really have a good answer for Uncle Squids.
No, that's okay. That was a perfectly good answer. As you started developing kind of your idea of what Magic Flavor Station would become and really leaning into the lo-fi side of things, we could talk about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but N64 Love Songs, is that the first Magic Flavor Station
release?
It was. Okay. With that, and it's just kind of how it, at least based on what you had on your Bandcamp, it resulted from like a couple years of kind of messing around on your guitar and just kind of with songwriting ideas, and then it was mostly improvised, correct?
Yeah,
ish?
It was.
Yeah, kind of talk about that process and making that album and everything.
Yeah, I'll talk about. I'll talk about that EP. So I was trying for, I think that EP came out in like 20. I forget when that came out, but
April 21.
April 21. Okay, that helps.
I wrote that down. I didn't just know that.
Okay, cool. So at that point, I was trying to do songwriting stuff and playing guitar for like 2.5 years. But again, I was still like trying to take the approach I took with like other stuff where it's like, I'm going to learn myself, but I'm not going to learn the right way. I'm just going to learn like a lot of like early guitar work I did was I used to take my twins' guitars, and she's still pretty upset that I would do this. I would tune all the strings to the same note, and then I'd make like fucking drone music because I heard Lou Reed did that. I heard Lou Reed did that, and I was like, I should try that, and it was really cool. The coolest part was we had this like shitty like those old like, what do you even call those guitars? You know the ones I'm talking about where it's like the old Chinese ones?
Oh. I don't know off the top of my head, I don't think, but
yeah, but like the one like we bought one of those at like a guitar shop for like I think like $50. We both threw half on it. But I would take all the notes, all the guitar strings, tune them to the same note, and then I run it through an octave pedal. So it was just like this giant, like,
yeah.
And like notes would be out of tune. So it was like this weird, like, orchestrated mess. But anyways, going back to N64, that was like, I wanted to do songwriting stuff for years, and I still have like the early like voice memo demos from like high school on my phone, I think somewhere. But I was always scared about trying to release that because my singing voice is just, I have not I didn't get to a point where I was comfortable with how I sung until like actually like a couple months ago. So it was just hard doing that. But again, eventually I took the lo-fi route and like leaned into it a little. But what really triggered it was there's this song Glowworms, that Vashti Bunyan cover I did.
Yeah.
Fucking love that song. I crashed my first car, I think it was a Chevy Blazer. I crashed my Blazer while that song was playing. And
wow.
I had a lot of free time because I couldn't leave the house anymore. That was 2020, so I was taking a gap year and working. So when I wasn't working, I just wasn't leaving the house. So eventually I thought, like, I'm just going to record a cover of the song that was playing in my car when I fucking totaled it. And then that's how that Glowworms recording came out. And I was like, this sounds really cool. I wonder if I can make other shit that sounds like this, but like with my music. So I'd just end up coming up with, and I did this for the other album too, just with different tunings. I would just end up coming up with riffs I thought sounded cool. And then I just record me like making up like lyrics and like, cause like I can't, if I write lyrics down, they don't end up being used, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, at least with how I'm wired, like I need to get it done in one sitting. Otherwise it's not going to happen. Like all the Magick Flavor Station songs I've recorded, outside of maybe having a voice memo demo where I'm just like humming like a melody or something, like they were all like, I started recording today and I finished it. Yeah.
Word.
And if I really wanted to, I mean, there's been a couple of times where I've gone back and like re-recorded stuff, but that is very rare.
Very few and far between, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I would just make up riffs, record myself singing with like made up melodies, with made up lyrics and melodies and shit, and then I would overdub it with synths, and that's how N64 started and ended, I guess. That's basically how that record came to be.
Yeah. Did you always know, you kind of like, based on how even making that record felt and kind of like what that was like for you, did you always, or at least did you know right away that you wanted to keep on kind of going in this direction? Or was this like, was there ever a chance you're like, oh, this might just be like a one-off, let's try how this different musical approach feels? It seems to have worked well enough to keep doing it and kind of keeping that fold and making cool stuff, but I want to hear your perspective on it.
I always wanted to do music I could play live. And I felt like I wasn't able to do that with Uncle Squids to a degree. Yeah. Like, I mean, even now, like I've done like I've done DJ sets as Uncle Squids, and they've been fun, but they just, for me, like it didn't feel like music I could play live, because it was like my senior year, and I didn't really start thinking about that more and more until my senior year in high school, where I went to, my twin brought me to a basement show, probably the best basement show you could see in 2019. It was like origami. It was at High Watt. It was like origami.
Was it the Gami nice short fiction show?
Yeah.
That one. I literally elbowed my roommate in the head that show before we even really knew each other. No, that was an insane show.
I got slammed into the pool in the High Watt house
not the pool.
like 2 or 3 times. It was fucking awesome. But yeah, after I went to that show, I really wanted to make music I could play live, so I could play basements and stuff. And again, I just didn't feel like I was doing that with Uncle Squids. So when I started the Magick Flavor Station project, even when I was like, even if I thought, there was points where I was like, this is just going to be a one-off, I was like, this is a step in the right direction though, because it's like I'm singing. If I want to do live shows with this, I can like bring an acoustic out and like do all that shit. And so I kind of like, so simultaneously I didn't know where it was going, but also I knew it was a step in the right direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. Cool. Going from there to talk about, yes, at the time of recording your most recent, and you at least described N64 as an EP. Would you call Life is Moving Too Fast as an album? It's about at least longer.
Yeah,
it's
I would
more
say
tracks.
that one's an album.
Okay.
N64 is more of an EP.
I felt reluctant like labeling it an EP because I know like sometimes people like an album can be an album even if it's only 13 minutes long. Like grindcore exists, but
Yeah,
stuff like that.
No, I label N64 as an EP, and then Life is Moving Too Fast I can consider an album more. Even outside of like because like a lot of like every project I've done outside of like the ambient drone shit like is pretty short. Like I outside of when I'm like working with people or again I'm making like drone stuff, it's really hard for me to make a long album. But yeah, Life is Moving Too Fast I consider an album.
Yeah, I would, from an external perspective, I would classify that the same. With the songs that ended up here, when did these cast start taking shape? Because this is the full title is Life is Moving Too Fast, I'm Stuck in the Snow, came out in June of this year. When did this project kind of start, the seeds get planted? When did it first start taking shape?
Let me think here. I have to dig back a little bit.
You're good.
Because there was like multiple points. Initially, how that project started was I was going to record a split with my friend Mac, who, Mac, if you're listening to this, hello, hi, please come back from Nashville. We miss you. I was going to record a split with my friend Mac, and I ended up, I don't remember if Matt, no, that was later, but I ended up recording, I just started recording stuff, and what I did for that album, I had two goals. Goal one, I wanted to put drums in it, because if you notice, N64 has zero drums.
No drums.
I had one song I did with drums for N64, but I scrapped it because it was bad. But I wanted to put drums in it, and I wanted to trade out my synths. At that point, I started collecting like Casio keyboards, like the old shitty.
Yeah.
So I wanted to switch those out. So instead of using synths, I used that. So I ended up recording the first song I recorded. It was around early September-ish. It was that Bound 3 track.
Mm-hmm.
I recorded that for that split, and then it just kind of happened. At least for the first chunk of the record, I recorded that, and then literally the next day I recorded 2005 Ford Focus. And at that point, that was like my side of the split. But then it just like the split idea just kind of fell through, and then eventually I just started making my own record, and that's kind of how that started. I held on to those songs for a long time, and then like at that point, just in my life in general, I felt like when I picked the album back up, it was like a few months later. I had some events happen in my life, and then also I just like I didn't know where I was going, so I just like felt stuck, and I recorded the album in winter, so I felt stuck in snow.
Yeah, that the vibe of the record is very befitting to that, just very very wintry. Yeah. Which is funny that came out in June. I'll say that.
Yeah, no, it definitely like it. I tried to get it done earlier. It just kind of happened. That's just how that happened.
No, I get it.
Which is okay.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. It's great.
It is what it is. But yeah, I just started recording. I took a break after those two songs. Well, I tried not. It just kind of happened because I was busy with life at that point. And then I got to a point at late December where I was just really fucking depressed from a bunch of things. I had like just gotten out of a relationship, and also I tried new medication that ended up making my anxiety actually way worse.
Yeah,
fun when that happens. But I had all those factors going, and then eventually I just didn't want to leave the house, so I recorded a lot of those songs because of that. And then it helped too that I started playing shows. The first show I did was early December. It was Uncle Squid's DJ set, but I got offered to do a Magick Flavor Basement show by my friend Walker, who's amazing. And I got to play another show with Walker soon, because we would, for my early show setups, I'd have him play like organ, and then I would play like guitar and sing. It was so cool. He had like one of those like portable fucking like
Yeah, like
organs with like
but
the
without
drums
being
on it.
like a synth or like a Yamaha keyboard. It was actually an organ. Yeah.
Yeah, it was an actually. It was called like it was like a traveling something.
I'm
Like
jealous. That's cool.
traveling wandering genie, something like that. But
Okay.
he had this really cool organ. He'd run through a pedal board, so I'd have him play, and then I'd play guitar and sing. Hopefully, I can do a gig with him again soon because that shit was awesome.
Yeah.
And also in general, shout out Walker. But he offered me to do a Magic Flavor gig, and that's kind of what pulled me out of that like funk, is because I kind of wanted to start making. It made me focus on like finishing that album because it's like I need stuff I can play live, and then also it was it was like that, and like again like when I was before that again I was just really I wasn't leaving the house, so I needed like something to do, so I was like recording music and shit. And I ended up recording a lot of shit that didn't get released, but if you come to my shows and you buy a t-shirt from me, you can get a secret CD with a bunch of unreleased stuff.
Oh, a little gift with purchase. That's some cool incentive.
Yeah, no, that's I think if you buy it off Bandcamp too, I ship the CD, and then it comes with a little Bandcamp code for like the digital like secret, the secret deluxe cut, I call it. But
cool. Yeah. As far as kind of the direction the album took, besides the more kind of clear cut, like I want to add drums, I want to swap out, see what Casio, like these old keyboards can do for me. As far as like kind of like your process for lyrics and for even like the guitar, since that's still, despite all like the kind of ambiance, the synth work, the kind of atmospheric side of things, like it's still the prime focus is the guitar and your vocals for the most part. Was that similar approach to how you made N64? Just kind of found what worked for you, what felt comfortable, or what was that like for you?
It was similar, but I just gotten better at it. So, and there was points where like I started trying to write more before I got into like I know Bound 3, like the melody, I didn't make up the melody on the spot. I just I made up the guitar riff, and then I recorded a demo of just me going like ba 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 because I thought that was a cool melody. I actually recorded demos before I went into the album. That's basically
the main difference.
But not for all the songs. I think I only did that with like Bound 3 and that Ballad of Peter Griffin track, which was that's my favorite song from the album. Yeah, it's a lot of people's favorites too.
It's the album opener. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that one was cool. But no, I tried. A lot of it was made up on the spot, but there was definitely like I thought more about it at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like I tried to write, like I knew what I wanted to talk about on it, because like again, like at that point I just felt like stuck, and I kind of want to make an album that like sounded like that, if that makes sense. Yeah, because I know like in general, like I guess like the more specific area I was just like really worried I was going to be stuck in the suburb I currently live in just like for the rest of my life, and I would never leave, because there are a lot of people who do that.
Yep.
And I was just like fuck. So a lot of the album was just from a position where like what would be the shit I would complain about if I was still stuck here like in my 30s. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, like songwriting, like exercise, or even just like for your own like self-navigation. Like that's a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, and like I felt like I was just gonna, and like there are like lyrics where I touch on things like Ballad of Peter Griffin was definitely my most thought out song on that album, I think. Not even because I thought of the lyrics like before I started. The only part I thought out, I recorded a demo of just me singing and shit, but like the only part I thought out was the "You're gonna die just like this." That song though was based off an experience I had in high school, where it was my psychology teacher, it was my psychology teacher, Mr. Schwartz. He was telling a story about when he was in high school, and I remember he went to the same high school he taught at. And I remember at one point, like, some kid started like laughing, and he was like, "You went to high school here too?" And then he just looked at him and he was like, "You think this is funny now, but when I'm teaching your kids psychology, it's not going to be so funny." And then I was like, "Holy shit! People never leave Cottage Grove."
Oh, it's Cottage Grove. No.
Oh, fuck. And that stuck with me. Like, and then like 3 years later, when I was in that weird depressed state, I thought back to that moment, and then that's how Ballad of Peter Griffin happened. But in general, that whole album was just shit related to that. Like,
real. Kind of shifting gears a little bit. This was like totally new surprise to me when I was like kind of listening through your discography over the past week and whatnot. But I found the Destructor, the release you did with Tekio.
Tekio, man.
Tekio, okay, yeah. Which is that like your first release, like specifically with a rapper, where you're like making all the beats, someone else is rapping, or did you have like other harder to find projects that were kind of on that side of things?
I've done like one-off tracks. I worked with an internet buddy of mine who was rapping internet, but more like an acquaintance. It was just one time I was like, "Hey, do you have any fucking acapellas I can remix?" But I made remixes for a long time, and like a lot of them are still up on YouTube. And like a lot of my DJ sets I do too are remix focused. So like if you ever come to one of those, I'll play like Playboy Cardi fucking like acapella under like this beat I made or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was making a lot of remixes for a long time, and like I always wanted to do shit like that, and I still like want to do it more, especially like if I could find like more like local rappers to work with. Even though I'm kind of like picky with that, not even in a mean way. It's just sometimes like if it's an artist I don't think I can like that I don't think would want to rap on the beats I make, and like I'd have to change how I make beats for them. Like I don't ever want to do that. But yeah, no, Tekio, I eventually like we were gonna. I don't know where that's
they kind of came from the vapor scene, right? Too.
Yeah, he came from the vapor scene for sure.
Is that kind of how you guys got connected?
That's like how I kind of started knowing him. But he started rapping too, and I was like, "This shit is tight." And I eventually he like wanted to form like a rap collective, so I joined in as like a beat maker, and that kind of fizzled out. But I was still like friends with Tekio, and eventually I made the first beat on that album, sampling it. That first beat that it samples this old horror movie called Pen that I still think is up on YouTube. It's worth a watch. It's fucking weird, but it's definitely worth a watch if you're able to see it. But I made that beat, and then I was just like, because I want to make like some weird like Space Ghost perp type shit. But I made that beat, and then I sent it to him because I was like, this sounds cool, and I bet he could do some shit with it. And then it kind of just went from there, and we made that whole like little mixtape. We want to make a second one too eventually, but we're very early in talking about that.
Yeah,
so
I mean, plus that's only been out for like a couple months now, even, so it's not like it's been a long time. It's like it makes sense that still the next one's in the works, but it's cool to hear that there's plans for more. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, Tekio's a really fun rapper to work with too, because he's also a producer. Yeah. So sometimes like he'll send you. I remember there's times he'd send me like tracks back, and he added like percussion, or like he like made a new drum groove for like the beat I made, and I was like, whoa, I didn't think about doing shit like this with that. And like it was cool because he would make because you know when you work with like a lot of other people, like sometimes they just take the beat as is and they just work with it, but like he melded. One of the best things about Tekio, I think, is that he's able to like take your beats and then edit them so it works more for him, and more so it has a general sound, and that was really cool to hear. Like one of the tracks on there, going back to Playboy Cardi remixes, I think it was the track featuring that Evo rapper. I don't know if you remember that one.
I think so.
that beat with like the weird backwards bell beat. I made that for a Playboy Cardi remix for a DJ set.
Oh, yo, and just getting
And
reused.
then
That's
just
awesome.
randomly, I was like, I wonder. And then like Tekio asked for beats, and I was like, "Do you want the beat for this?" And then I sent him a Playboy Cardi remix, and he was like, "This is dope as fuck." Yeah. So, yeah, I can.
That's tight.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that project a lot. I'm gonna have to spend some more time with that. And cool to hear that.
Yeah,
There's
it's
more
a fun
coming.
one. I definitely want to work with rappers more. So if you're a rapper listening to Your Coffee and you need beats, let me know.
Yeah. we love to play matchmaker on the podcast.
Dude, that would be tight.
Cool. That covers a lot of what I want to talk about. I know you're already working on more new music, specifically as Magic Flavor Station. A single came out a month or two ago. At least I got to listen to a couple of the, I don't know if they're finished tracks or just like demos of current tracks.
Those are finished.
Those are okay. Yeah, there's at least a handful of tracks that are already worked on. What's kind of been your mindset for this new project, and has creative process kind of just been remaining similar and kind of just following that through line and just kind of continuing to grow in that sound and that approach, or what's kind of been the idea for these latest batch of songs for this next forthcoming project?
Well, initially what I wanted to do, and that's where that one single I put out, that's not going to be on the EP, or at least not in that form. I might re-record it and make it fit with the new sound I'm going for. But initially what I wanted to do was I wanted to make like a B-side tape to like N64. So that way, like, if you put those two together, it would be like one cohesive album. But the more I started messing around with it, and the more I started, so every project I try to use a different synth as like the main background textures. Like the second one was like the Casios. The first one, I'm staring at the synth right now, was a Yamaha Reface DX. So N64 used that one. Life is Moving Too Fast used the fucking Casios. This one, I started using my sampler because my sampler has like built-in like weird synths and stuff, and like in particular it has like Mellotron.
Oh, yo, yeah.
Sound and shit, which has like been really fun to mess with. It has like a built-in like Mellotron like VST. That sounds really cool. But
that's dope.
I kind of moved away from trying to make an N64 type EP because I find that like I don't. It's just it gets annoying when I try to repeat things.
Yeah,
I guess where it's just like I'm trying to make this sound like this, and like so like. But yeah, it started from me trying to do an N64 part 2. Basically, I was gonna call it PS1 Pizza Demos, and actually, I was talking with the label I do physicals with, and if I end up making that PS1 Pizza's Demos project, because I still think about it once in a while. I want to do this. We were talking about. You know those old like Pizza Hut demo discs that the title
kind of. I remember like they're like the weird like tiny discs that had like video games on them. I don't know if they came from Pizza Hut or like other like fast food like McDonald's like kids meal things. And it has like a really terrible game on there, like Bass Pro Fishing or something.
Yeah, well, we figured out. We were trying to figure out how we could make those like CDs that looked like those basically, and we were gonna make it like. But yeah, that's a whole side tangent for an unreleased project. But that's how that single came out. I eventually decided to switch directions, and that was really the only song I had completed for the PS1 Pizza Demos. So I just released it as like a one-off.
Yeah.
But in general, the new album, again, it's like kind of Mellotron focused for like the background on guitar parts. But I've been trying to like get better with my singing, and so far. I guess like the vocal parts are like less monotone, and I'm getting to that point where I'm starting to get better with it.
Yeah,
so
you're starting to get comfortable. Yeah, cool.
And then I don't know, just in general, I wanted to make something that was like really just weird and out there, more so than my other releases. And I those tracks that I sent you, the finished ones, all came while I recorded those while I had COVID. Okay. And I just was not leaving the room I didn't leave like this room for a whole week.
Oh boy.
And I just because of COVID. And also at that point, like, and it's no one's fault. it's no one's fault at all because, you know, it is what it is. But like a lot of my friends were just happened to be really busy that week. So I was barely talking to anyone while I was just stuck in here. And I felt like I was isolated in this weird fucking box. So like, I don't know. And those are feelings that have not even fully gone away now that I'm out of that quarantine. It's really bizarre, and I should talk to a therapist. But
I always highly recommend therapy.
It's good. Your coffee is actually sponsored by BetterHelp.
Oh god. Yeah, I would literally like take all my podcast bucks, all $3, and just burn them. And I would, if BetterHelp ever came on board, I would shut it all down before we get a BetterHelp sponsorship. I hate BetterHelp so much.
So use code your coffee for 20% off. But
oh gosh,
I don't know. Like the whole album in general, I kind of just want to like explore either like feelings of isolation or just like stuff with my mental health in general. I think like writing stuff related to it, and like, because sometimes when I find that when I've written lyrics and I've put to words like shit I was feeling, I kind of realized it was ridiculous after. Like none of my friends were actually purposely avoiding me. My brain was just being silly and trying to convince me that that was the case, you know?
Yep.
So the next album, I'm trying to like delve deep into like mental health lyrics and shit about like stuff that I'm thinking, which I guess I was kind of doing with Life is Moving Too Fast, but I guess I want to be more specific with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I very much relate to the whole like your brain telling you one thing, and then as soon as you kind of like either think about it or in your case like sing about it or say it out loud, it's like that's not true at all. That's so absurd.
Yeah, no, and it's like definitely like what I've realized recently, especially while writing and like working on this album, was like what I internalize versus what is actually the case kind of is very different a lot of the time. Like I don't think anyone, like I know none of my friends hate me because they're my friends, but like sometimes like something small will happen and I'll be like, well, clearly that's a sign they never want to talk to me again. And it's kind of just, it's been simultaneous. It's been helpful and also like kind of fun, just like looking at those little parts of my brain that are just like not completely well and kind of not making fun of them, but like writing about those feelings and then being able to move on and be like, okay, that wasn't necessarily the truth. What was going on? Yeah,
the benefit of kind of perspective and of distance that kind of changes how you view those feelings compared to like when you're still like in the thick of it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely helps. And you know, it's also like if anyone's listening to this that also like relates to these feelings, it's helpful too, because it's like, you know. Yeah. You're not the only fucking crazy person out there. Actually, a lot of us are very unwell. Yeah. That's kind of...
A lot of us are very unwell. True words have never been said.
Yes. For sure.
Cool. Kind of moving on from there, kind of as we wrap things up, what else do you and Magick Flavor Station have planned in the immediate future? You mentioned the show you have with Floodwater Angel and a few other folks coming up, I think, pretty soon from recording. But beyond that and just kind of working on new music, anything in the immediate future?
Well, I got that gig with Floodwater November 12th. If you guys want to come to that, it'll be a really good show. Even if I bomb, the other 3 bands playing are fucking phenomenal.
Word, yeah.
Outside of that, I want to work more with other people because, again, while I was working on the Weird Isolation album, I you know, like I kind of realized, like making music with other people would be something really fun and like I want to do. And I've done like through the internet and stuff with like Techio and, you know, Desert Sand, but like I want to like actively do that with people. And I kind of have. Especially like I'm playing synth stuff on the new Floodwater Angel album. I don't know, which has been a lot of fun. Yeah. And on Halloween, I actually I went to their show in 7th Street so I could like record it on like a tape, and I think they just cool. I have the tape right there, but they mixed the tape audio with like some live stage noise Sam got, and I helped them make a live album, and I just want to do more shit like that in general.
Cool. Yeah.
Where it's just like I just want to work with other people, basically.
Yeah, bring it up.
Not necessarily like join bands, but like here's like my little synth part for your fucking psych rock masterpiece, you know?
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Bring in collaboration in any way, shape, or form.
Who is calling me? Oh, sorry, 1 second.
No, you're good.
I'm just gonna decline that. That was my twin.
Oh. Well,
my twin's also in a band, by the way. Cannabis Kiss. You guys should listen to them.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Cannabis Kiss. I don't think I've seen them live, unfortunately, yet, but I've heard very good things, so that's super cool.
They remind me a lot of like the Moldy Peaches, which is a band I absolutely adore. And they also all absolutely adore. So yeah, definitely check them out if you're into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's actually another kind of perfect segue into my last question. I like ending interviews the same way. I just like asking, what are some of the like local or just underappreciated underground like bands and artists that you think more people should be listening to? Sounds like Cannabis Kiss is top of that list, so definitely I'll double that shout out. But who else locally or just across the internet that you think people should be turned on to? I can definitely talk about local artists I like, because there's a lot of them. Yeah. I know, like, talking about my friend Walker earlier, who played organ for me. He's in a band called Psychic Sports. Okay.
And they're fucking awesome. I got to play a gig with Psychic Sports once. That was that first Magick flavor gig, and that was amazing. The bits they come up with in between songs are fucking so funny. Like, at the gig I played, I don't know how the fuck Walker got 30 promo Mew Pokemon cards from like the 90s, but he randomly got like a fuck ton of them. So like in between songs, at one point he stopped playing drums and he just grabbed them and he handed them out to he gave them to everyone. And just crazy bits like that. Like Psychic Sports is amazing.
A lot of Mew cards, okay.
They're amazing. Check them out. And then also like Anita Velveeta, obviously. Yep. Like the GOAT, like Alien Book Club. I love all their stuff. And then another one, my last one I'll say, outside of those, I think 3 I've stated so far. What was it? Larry Wish, if you've heard of him. I've played at this point, I think like 3 gigs with Larry. He is so awesome as like a musician and a performance artist. And also he's just like a really nice guy. And like, I just like the way like watching like Larry Wish and like Walker with like Psychic Sports and all his projects, like watching those two have definitely been very informative for me as I start playing live shows, because I'm still pretty new to it. Mm-hmm. So watching them has been like a huge influence on me, as well as like Floodwater Angel. That doesn't even need to be said. I think like their shit is crazy too. But yeah, all those people, definitely check them out. And yeah.
Cool. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Raymond, for taking time out of your day, especially right after waking up. I appreciate
for sure. No, thanks
talking
for
about everything.
It's been fun.
I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be able to make the show on the 12th. If the episode's out before then and you're listening, definitely check out that show. If not, for the research chemicals for the music. I'm excited to see what's coming next from any of your different projects. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun talking.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.